Hello, Confident Harley here, and on today's episode I'm going to be working with Karen Roberts and Bonnie Hughes' Wild Wisdom Australia deck. And we are going to do an intuitive pull. This is going to be where we just read one card in many details, and I'm just going to kind of explain how to do that. So first, when we're shuffling the cards, we're going to be starting with our hand flat, and we're pulling from the back of the deck and pulling forward, and we're dropping a few cards at a time. So that's a basic traditional shuffle for cards. Normally we want to wait until we feel the energy of a card speak to us. Now that can be a card flying out. If it's that way, I usually wait for one that's not so quick to talk to me. I usually wait for one that's being a little bit more patient, depending on the read. These ones are kind of being soft today. I've worked with them many times. And then sometimes, I'm looking for a sensation coming from a card. So here I just felt one that was kind of angsty. I don't want to pull that. So, and I am reading from my fingers, and my fingers are telling me how the cards are feeling. So that's often, sometimes they're warm, sometimes they're hot, sometimes they talk by movement. And sometimes they maybe won't be talking to you. And if that's the case, then you just need to pick one and start with that until you intuitively start to learn how to differentiate subtleties in your card reads. Okay, so when I pull a single card, we're working with the Rainbow Lorikeet, and it's love language. So traditionally what you're going to do is you're going to pull that card, and then you're going to go to the deck and you're going to read it and intuitively pick up information that makes sense to you. Hold on to what resonates and let go of what doesn't. As you progress in your card reading, you will naturally find a lot of cards that are very in tune with your energy. So when you start pulling for people, you'll know if you're pulling for yourself or somebody else first, because if you've worked a lot with a deck before, you're going to be pulling a lot of the same cards. So when I'm working with somebody else, the cards often are actually different from the ones that I personally pull. Now I've been doing this long enough that I have a combination of the two scenarios that will happen in most of my reads, but that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so we're working with the love language. I also, as I was shuffling the deck, did see a peek of this card. So I saw that this card wanted to come out first, so keep that in mind too. Normally we have shadow on the bottom, and then on the top is what the current issue usually is, okay? Somewhere in the middle is that storyline book, somewhere in the middle, right? Okay, so when we're working with the Rainbow Lorikeet, and I'm just reading this as a single card, the first thing I'm going to notice is proximity. How close is the character to the image? What's around the character? Things like that. Okay, so we've got a bird. The bird is up in center. She is totally accepting that she is being seen in fullness in this picture. She's not hiding, right? She's kind of like all in her glory. She's very close to these flowers, so I could insinuate something about she has a deep relationship with plants. And then she's on this stick that could kind of represent stability, something like that. She might be particularly drawn to these pink flowers, so that's something that we could intuitively read. And then when it comes to her coloring, we're working with a single bird, so that'd be a number 1, and then I would have a predetermined focus of what 1 means, what 2 means, what 3 means, and that can be whatever you create it to be. There is definitely thought and consciousness of higher perspective of what they all mean, but it's also okay to go your own route and kind of determine which each one means, or according to the read, what you would want. So with this card, we're working with a yellow, we're working with a green, we're working with a blue, we're working with a red, and a little bit of white for the actual bird, and then you've got all this black and brown. So I would read chakras off of that. The red means this bird is probably very, very passionate, has a lot of solar plexus. This bird probably sings all the time, probably has no problem singing. I don't know the behaviors of the bird, but that's what we would do once we step into spirit animal guides, is actually learning what the actual animal does. What I do love about this deck, ladies, is that this particular deck is all wildlife in Australia, so I'm getting to learn the wildlife of Australia before I go visit, right? So that's a big reason why I purchased this deck. Okay, and then, other things that I noticed when I look really closely, we've got some sacred geometry in this card, okay? I don't know if you can see it, but I'll try to let that zoom on the camera. So we've got the flower of life, the start of the flower of life in the back there. So then intuitively I can read that. We can read by counting numbers. So if we count like all of the yellow flowers, there's 4, there's 3 pink ones, and then there's 2 orange ones. So 2 orange, 3 pink, 4 yellow, and then I read the chakra system and then what my numbers mean for that as well. And so I've got a bunch of little charts and things that have to do with letting those determining your personal practice of what that looks like, right? I've got a deck that if I were talking about channeling, I'd be talking about, okay, when I want to channel the Rainbow Lorikeet energy, what do I read? Passion, playful, not afraid to be seen. She's moving from like a little bit of creative energy into total solar plexus. Particularly fond of her lovers, and I'm guessing it's the flowers kind of represent maybe all the animals that the flowers actually bring, right? And so that's another way to think of proximity, like where is this character in the bigger picture? Okay, so that's one single way to read this card. And then we also have this greenery, okay? So we're getting really in depth. Another thing that we can look at, right, is all this bright color, and then what is supporting her in the back. In the back, she's supported by a throat chakra. I feel like this particular bird loves to be seen too. And then you've got all this greenery, which is kind of different. We've got some lines, and then we've got some circles, and then these ones kind of like feather out. And so those are other things that we can work with when we're reading the cards. Does the energy, when we're reading somebody and they're talking to us, does their energy feel like it's sparking like this? Or does it feel like there's like lines coming down and it's like maybe that's a negative voice that's coming through, or maybe it's a very positive one, right? But that's when we read the person as we read the cards, both looking for their emotional responses and looking for their, like, when they're able to release, okay? So that's probably the biggest key that I can offer today, is that as we're reading for somebody, we're listening to their body, we're listening to the words that they're saying. We want to allow them to have throat chakra a lot. It doesn't always come through on the first read, but we want them to often be in their throat chakra, expressing things. Although as a psychic, we do intuitively pick up information, the ultimate card read is for you and for your self-expression as well. So just keep that in mind, and then to go a little bit broader, when we start looking at this particular card as a whole component, okay? So now the bird is maybe the focus in the center, but then all this plant life is also supporting, as well as the bark in the tree, right? And so this could also maybe represent that, like, we need to tap into a little bit more atmospheric support, rather than just feeling like as a bird we can do it all on our own, something kind of like that. Okay, so that's my one card pull for today. I hope that you enjoyed that video, and I will be back with another. Cheerio! Supposed to you might turn it on the video. Huh?